What's up? Hey everybody, Nicky Ads here. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Am I good? Vintage, Brennan, do I sound all right? Sound clear?
You're great.
All right, perfect. What's happening? I'm excited to start tonight off. I think we've done a few weeks of these now. I think we're getting into our rhythm. Excited to see the momentum on social. Excited to see what's going on in the Discord. I don't know if anybody in here is from the Discord now, or if anybody hasn't joined yet, but jump in. You can get to it via our website, which is MNTGE.io, MNTGE.io. It's starting to happen. Information starting to pour out. I think tonight is going to be a great night of a little bit of shared alpha and just good stories. And I'm excited to talk to a few other people here tonight who make up the Futureverse or the FLUF world or the Party Bears, or man, they have so many amazing projects. So we will dig into it. I think everybody's on. I know I see Alex, I see Nux, Aaron McDonald. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
There he is. That beautiful New Zealand accent. All right. So I will jump in, and then Sean, man, feel free to jump in. Brennan, Darian, anybody, I don't want to hog the conversation, but Aaron, you and I connected. I mean, we connected a lot. You connected early in this journey for me of what is Web3. I actually minted FLUFs. Like, I'm day one.
Yeah.
So I feel like our journey has been very linked. So I remember that day sitting, during the pandemic and getting a text being like, check out these bunnies. And I went to town. I think I bought like 20 of them actually. And then we were connected through Outlier Ventures and Jamie Byrne, and I think Sean Neff and a bunch of people. And we started talking. At the time we started to talk, you started to give me this really broad vision. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Nice to meet you. And I think I was like, you followed up a few times, and then eventually I was like, I think you and I got on a Zoom together, and I started to listen more and more. And what you started to share with me was so much bigger than anything I'd seen. And I met a lot of projects, and I met a lot of PFP projects, and I met a lot of things that were happening at the time. But what you were seeing and what you were building and what you're thinking about the future, it was so captivating. And I think we built a bond, and we've shared a lot of information, and the fact that we can connect tonight around the project that we're building at MNTGE is really exciting, and kind of share you guys' involvement there. So I think the first thing I'll do is for you to introduce yourself. Alex, Nux, I'd love to hear who everybody is real quick, and then I also want to follow it up with like, what's going on in the water in New Zealand? Why is there so much insane technology coming out of New Zealand right now?
Yeah, man. Like I agree. This has been a pretty interesting ride together, and I've appreciated your insight along the way. One of the few people I've met in this journey who really gets culture and understands how that intersects with this technology, and so it's been really powerful, and we've done some cool things together already, and when the opportunity came up to collaborate around MNTGE, one of the better thought out plays that I've seen come together in this space. Of course, naturally, we had to jump in and see how we could help make that idea become a reality. For those who don't know me on this, Aaron McDonald, based down in little old New Zealand, founder of a few Web3 companies, including Non-Fungible Labs, which produce the FLUF World collection, the Altered State Machine, which has built the link between artificial intelligence and metaverse characters and content, and a number of technology companies that are building pretty cool protocols in the Web3 space. We brought all of these things together to create the FutureVerse ecosystem. You can read about it at futureverse.com. But essentially, the mission is to create the world's most magical Web3 onboarding experience for users, expose them to awesome content across a range of different channels, and prove that the idea of the open metaverse isn't a meme, that this kind of level of interoperability that people imagine in Ready Player One actually is real. And so we've got 350 odd people now across the teams working on this in different domains, producing world-class content and technology to achieve that vision. And so that's a little bit about us. In terms of Nick's last question about what's down in the water, I think New Zealand people, we have a saying down here that's called being able to fix everything with number 8 wire. And number 8 wire was a specific standard of fencing wire that was very popular in New Zealand's pioneering days. And many of the people who came to New Zealand were pioneers. And so being so far away from the rest of the world, we had to get pretty inventive when it came to making things work, because you couldn't just kind of get the supplies you needed or the materials you needed. And so a lot of things got put together with this number 8 wire, and it became a piece of our kind of historical memology within New Zealand. And so we have this kind of pioneering spirit and this inventive nature of being able to kind of pull things together and see the world through slightly different eyes in our DNA. I think if you add to that specifically around the metaverse, New Zealand is the home of arguably the world's best visual effects industry. The team down here from Digital started that journey for us as a nation, and now we've got many award-winning, Oscar-winning game studios and effects studios down here. So there is an enormous wealth of talent down in this market of people for us to kind of go out and poach and bring into the Web3 and FutureVerse ecosystem.
And has Peter Jackson and the Hobbit world, has that had a major effect on it too? I always think about
Weta Digital is actually the company that Peter co-founded down here to build the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, and does work on an enormous array of movie titles. Pretty much everyone that major blockbuster you can think of in some way would probably be connected to Weta, who was actually recently acquired by Unity earlier this year. So really kind of big industry that was started essentially by Sir Peter Jackson and Sir Richard Taylor. And we released our first collaboration with the Weta Workshop team earlier this year with Sir Richard in the Dr. G ray gun collab.
Amazing. So, and then Nux and Alex, you guys want to give a quick introduction? I'd love to give the whole team intros.
It's always really difficult to follow Aaron. So thanks for that. So I guess for those of you who don't know, my name's Alex Smaler, co-founder of Non-Fungible Labs. I was living in London for 8 years, came back to New Zealand and connected with Aaron early last year. And, we saw the potential of the space, and Aaron was already so prolific across the kind of blockchain industry that he kind of, pulled a team of us together and just said, go for it and see what you can come up with. Long story short, that's kind of led to where we are today. It's been an incredible journey. But I think one of the coolest parts about this journey in this industry is about how it's kind of reshaping how we build communities and look at culture. It's something that we were very conscious of when it came to, launching FLUFs as the first collection. We saw what others were doing in the space, Bored Apes, etc., starting to build these kind of avatar collections and communities around them and all of this kind of promise of future utility. But when we looked at it, we were like, well, everything's heading to the metaverse, so why would you be 2D? And if you're going to be 3D, then you might as well be moving in some way. Well, if you're going to be animated, let's make them dance. If they're dancing, it might as well be to original music. And that's where, like, music is such a key part of culture, much like fashion is. So when you're looking at how you form these kind of communities, especially online, it's about coming together around shared interests like music or like fashion or like sports, with the partnership that we've just announced with FIFA. And that's, to me, one of the most exciting parts about a project like MNTGE is I find in this space there's a lot of kind of almost infighting, or like, us versus them. It's, Doodles versus Bored Apes versus Fluffs or whatever. Whereas for me personally, like, I don't see Bored Apes as a competitor. I don't see Doodles or Cool Cats as a competitor. We're all on this journey together. We've all got our own little communities. There's lots of overlap in different spaces, but we're all trying to see how we can take this incredible technology and apply it to kind of the future of individual identity and how that is tied together through culture. And the beauty of a project like MNTGE is that it transcends those existing boundaries within the space and of community. Because, if you're rocking some dope fashion, I mean, it doesn't matter what character you are or what kind of person you are, like, you're going to appreciate that, and it's going to span these different communities and tie them together. So that's what really excites me about this project. That, and I mean, the clothes are fire.
Yeah, thank you. That's okay. So we should get into that. So before we do that, let's jump. Nux, give us a quick intro. Want to hear who's the man behind the brand.
The man behind the brand, yeah. So my name's Nux, or Nick Sonotis. Doxed myself an intro to this. Basically, I've been working really closely with the MNTGE team for a few months now. I'm the head of product and partnerships for Non-Fungible Labs. I started as the head of partnerships a few months ago. Actually, MNTGE was my first foray into product for us, without spoiling any of what all that is. And I think it was really smart of Alex to kind of throw me in there because, it's kind of half partnership and half product. But, I don't want to duplicate anything that Aaron and Alex said. For me, I'll just give one quick little tidbit about my background that's sort of fun. Been in crypto for a long time and have been in NFTs for actually a long time too. FLUF was what made me kind of fall in love with NFTs as an actual like platform and, actual advancement of technology. But to be like 100% completely candid, I got into NFTs because I like to watch where the eyeballs go, to kind of steal a term from Gerry V there, just always understanding like how attention moves over time. And so I saw this giant movement of NFTs, and I'm a big time, actually, not as much anymore, but, people who follow me know that I've done a lot of flipping in my days, kind of, buy low, sell high with a lot of different NFTs. Well, a lot of that actually started with sneakers, collectibles, trading cards, stuff like that before I got into this whole world. So understanding and getting closer to you all and, visiting the warehouse last week and just getting an understanding of this whole vintage movement has just completely sparked my brain and imagination in all sorts of different ways. So it's just been a real pleasure to work directly with this team and build something really amazing. And I'm really excited to have this conversation and keep on building with you all.
Amazing. All right. So you guys, I think that's a little bit more info than we've given to date. And I'm actually excited to dig in. I think it's a really good time. Sean will probably jump in here or Brennan, but when we were conceptualizing this, what MNTGE was and how to create a brand and something with a really strong aesthetic and a fully kind of like a docs team, but of people who are, let's call it Web3 and sneakers and vintage. And we wanted to get in front and design something, and we want this brand to be native to Web3 and to fit across multiple digital platforms. We want to fit across multiple PFP projects. We have real life elements to it too, but what we're building is something that, safety, security, strong contracts, best in class development is what I think was one of the first things that was really important to us and to me. And so when we started with thinking about like, what's our vision, what's our look and feel, what are the kind of things we want to disrupt, and what are the products that we want to put on chain, and what are the things we want to digitize and animate and create and things. But, you guys were one of the first calls because I like, we need a team that understands how to build, and understands how to, I think, experiment within the space, do creative things, have played with financial models, have done a bunch of different elements of how we can build something compelling and exciting. So, I think it's worth noting that a lot of what's going on in the background, from the smart contracts that are being built and the some of the software, is coming from the non-fungible lab side. And that's where you say Nux, like on the project management side, you're kind of day to day with Brennan to think through a lot of those elements. And then Alex, like you said, it's about how do we fit across your brand of characters, and how can we be interoperable with other characters, whether they're Web3 characters or Web2 characters. So I think that's the first time we're sharing that publicly. I know there's an amazing, I'd say, investigative reporter, journalist, Twitter creator. I gotta find his, but he put out a video and he's done some really good investigative work. He kind of figured a lot of this out. But today, we're making it public. So that's one exciting things that I figured we wanted to announce. So I think, that being said, there'll probably be some pretty interesting immediate wearability on some crazy Sean stuff and some other designers across the world that you guys are building. I mean, Sean, is anything you want to kind of jump in here and highlight?
I think for me, it's just really excitement. Honestly, once we started, like you guys said, once we started meeting the team in Nux, like once we connected and stuff, and even, hearing about your background, like starting with the sneakers and collectibles, it's just so cool that like we keep building out this team. We keep finding so much like common thread between us all, and it's just building this like really, really strong, movement going forward. So, I mean, I'm just really excited. I think like, we were really excited to bring our ideas to life and kind of bring some of these dreams that we were dreaming up to life. And I just feel lucky that we have, the non-fungible team support on the other side. I mean, it just feels great. So I'm just stoked to, I mean, it's tough because like, I know we were even going to throw another teaser out there tonight. And so I think we're just so excited to show people what we've been working on. But yeah, I mean, that's really, that's it from me without sharing too much. Like, you don't get me on the line too long. I might end up saying some things we don't want to say, but I'm hyped. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're going to change the game with this. I mean, it's cool. I think for me, like every day, we have this group text and we're always constantly sending like updates to each other and stuff like that. And some of the updates that came through this last few days, kind of speaking to the interoperability and stuff that you were alluding to, Nick, just seeing some of that with my eyes is, I mean, it's like one of those pinnacle moments. So I'm beyond stoked.
I agree. Like I agree. It's like, how do we talk about a bunch of stuff without? But I want to ask you, from your design process, like you're someone who designed for Adidas, you design for, you design for your own brand, Round 2. Who am I missing? Who else are you working with these days?
Those are good. You hit some top ones. We could go on forever, but that's great.
You've done some other icons in the past. I mean, your Nike is one of the most recognized shoe ever. So you have this traditional design approach, right? And not traditional, but you've designed real world products, right? So now all of a sudden you're thinking about the digital landscape, the metaverse, some may call it, video games. How do you attach those back to real world elements? Like, can you walk us through a little bit of that creative process when you don't have any limits?
I mean, that's for me the most exciting. So my creative process specifically is, everyone knows I take a lot of inspiration from nature. I take a lot of inspiration just from the world around me, whether it's nature or whether I'm in the middle of one of the most dense cities in the world. Like, I'm constantly taking this inspo from what's around me. And I tend to really like to put like a psychedelic twist on it, or some like out of this world characteristic. And I think that's something that's really kind of been a fun personal challenge for me when designing the physical world, is that like, you've all seen my sneakers. I mean, they're pretty crazy. I don't really do stuff that's just like a normal one color shoe. I like to use color. I like to use texture. I like to invigorate those senses. You know what I'm saying? But I think what's, where that's coming from is I usually come up with an idea for a design or, a process or whatever it is. And usually it's like super out of this world. It's like insane. It's some psychedelic, crazy dream of what this product, could look like. And then I find myself using that as my inspo and really toning it down, where it's like I'll come into the design meeting with this insane shit that's just completely not possible on our planet Earth. And then we're like, okay, Sean, now let's start bringing it down to earth. And that's what my team's job is, really, is to tone me down and tell me what really can happen. And once we started having these conversations around designing these products, these vintage products that you'll see sooner than later, I realized that where I'm starting with my out of this kind of world of possibility inspo, that's actually just the starting point. And so it's been insane kind of flipping that perspective and being like, okay, whereas usually I'm coming with something crazy and we're toning it down, now I'm coming with something crazy and then the team's taking it and being like, yo, we made it even crazier. And I'm like, dude, this is out of control. And so it's like, for me, it's so special to be able to continue those stories. Like, I love taking something vintage and telling someone the story around it and then representing that story through a physical product that I've made inspired by that vintage piece. And I think now we have the opportunity to build the stories even further for that original vintage piece, as opposed to just using it as inspiration to create something new. And so I think like that's one of the handful of things that excites me, is like we're at a pivotal point where all of us, me, everyone listening, whoever's going to be a part of, Mintage and what we're doing, like you have a real opportunity to become a part of the history for each of these items and products that we're going to be putting out. So, I mean, it just excites me beyond articulation of words, So
I get it, it's amazing. So, and I want to jump back to non-fungible second, but Sean, one other thing is like, just talk, because we've talked about it in the past, but I always think it's worth highlighting. Just talk about the vintage market right now, because when I met you a year ago, or it's been longer than that, but when I walked into round 2 a year ago and I saw a Snoop Dogg vintage T-shirt,
yeah,
and you took me through the problem. You looked at me, you're like, vintage is an unbelievable market and it's growing, and and everything you said has come true. I mean, I rock a lot of vintage in my daily wardrobe. I'm seeing it in the streets all day. I'm starting to recognize authenticity versus hot topic. Like, tell me a little bit more about the market.
I can tell Nick's getting into vintage because now you're sending me photos from vintage stores and stuff, being like, yo, look what I found. And I'm like, all right, cool, I got him,
Well, I encourage I do encourage, I will say that now that I'm like, if I'll spend a Saturday hitting up a bunch of vintage stores now, and the gems that I'm finding, and look, and for people who are collecting NFTs, like there's so much similarity here. You're going in to walk something, you could buy something, you start to look at the traits and the rarity and the provenance of these items. I was in a store recently, and like there was this random hat in the corner, and the lady was like, "Oh yeah, that's a Ghostbusters painter hat." And I was like, "What does that mean?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I got it. It came on set. It was an original painter's hat from the original Ghostbusters movie." I was like, "Wait, what? Like, you kidding?"
No, it's cool. And like, to your point, it's like where vintage is headed, and that's why this is so interesting for me in connecting these worlds, is that like the same trajectory that the Web3 space is in is the same as vintage right now, where it's growing at an exponential rate, but it's growing in a way of accessibility. And so it's not growing where it's becoming more rare and more expensive. It's growing in a way where it's becoming more accessible, and it's allowing people to have that access to vintage clothes at their fingertips. Like, I was just driving down Beverly yesterday, and there was a big billboard with a QR code on it that said, making buying vintage easy for millennials. And I'm like, whoa, I'm like, this stuff, it's, every day I see something else that's just telling me like vintage is hitting mainstream and people need accessibility to those vintage options. It's not saying everyone needs that $2,000 Snoop shirt, but I'm starting to see every month more and more people, even like my little brothers who weren't into vintage before, are like interested in a pair of like vintage Carhartt double knee pants, because to them, those have more personality and more character than the pairs that maybe one of their friends is wearing to school that's brand new. And so we just continue to see vintage grow and grow and grow, but again, growing in the sense of accessibility. And that's why I think it's so fun connecting these two worlds, because I see, crypto and NFTs and stuff growing in the same sense, where the market's not becoming unobtainable, it's actually just becoming accessible. And
Right.
so since everyone's getting, NFTs and having Web3 at their fingertips to also transcend these worlds together, where vintage, like I said, is growing at the same pace, and then we're able to mix them. I mean, it's a game changer, to be honest. And even seeing how a lot of us come from this collectibles world, or this buy, sell, trade, or this, whatever it is, kind of like flip it, swap world. I mean, it makes the most sense. And so I think we're at a point of like a really pinnacle moment, of that transcending of the two parallels there.
You see this react.
I think.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think like the magic here is in a couple of really interesting things that we've been kind of banging on in terms of the what the open metaverse is all about, and that is connecting technology with culture, and with, like you said, bringing a partner in who has the ability to build well, to build strong, to build safe, and to make that experience accessible to everyone was really, really important to this. The other thing that we keep on banging on about is, using stories and using lore as the way to drive engagement. And this project fascinated me from the beginning because, the way that Sean goes about finding things he loves is always linked to the story and the history of that object. And so we're able to take something that has a very special history, that could have only been accessible to one person because that physical garment only was worn by that one person. And now we can make that story come alive through technology, so we can tell the story in the garment. And on top of that, we can make it accessible to more people, and so that they can have a piece of that history and that story. And it's not just characters that you build that into. We're building that into fashion with MNTGE. And I think that's the really special thing that's happening here. We get to activate stories for wearables in a way that other people haven't been, looking at doing before. I remember when I met Snoop for the first time and he was quizzing me on stuff. He's a person who knows a lot about this Web3 space. And we were talking about wearables, and I was like, imagine we don't have physics in the metaverse. Like, imagine what you could do with clothing when physics doesn't apply. And I think that's one of the exciting things we're really digging into when Sean was talking about letting creativity become unbridled. I think I said at the time, imagine if you could wear smoke. That's something you could never do in the physical world. Well, we can do that in the metaverse. And so it's not your traditional wearables play. We're really thinking deeply about how to connect stories to culture and fashion, and how to make those stories come alive in the metaverse when you wear these things.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just say, like, from the first couple conversations too, it's like Aaron, yourself, and Nux, and I know Dylan's in here as well, and the whole non-fungible team and FutureVerse team. It's like everything, when Sean was speaking on how crazy some of his ideas have, you really have brought this, helped bring this vision to life, and build these really high end, really pieces of art that, we can't wait to show everybody.
No, exactly.
Agreed.
So Aaron, tell us a little bit more. Like, so we got the background, but like the FutureVerse and what's going on sort of next with the platform, because I think we can come back to MNTGE and things like that. But I'd love to hear, number one, like where you guys are going, and then also maybe broadly, what's your take on the space in the bear? And obviously we had some exciting moments this week with some drops. What's your take overall? But tell us about the FutureVerse.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, to get the market question out of the way, when you've been building for as long as I have and as long as we have, market cycles come and go, and bear markets often are the times when the real gems come out of the woodwork, because they're not there for a cycle of hype. They're there because they've got something sustainable and a mission they really believe in. And so we're probably more excited, in a funny sense, that projects that are doing that real work will start to come and shine through. And when the market sets up again, as it inevitably does, all that hard work becomes easy to execute on. And people kind of look at what we've achieved in the last year and like, how did you build so much? Well, we'd been building in the beer before that. And so you're not starting from a point of zero. You've got kind of infrastructure and people and strategy that can play into when the market cycles come. And like, you know, the stuff ends, it always does. And the important thing is to be ready for it. In terms of like the broader FutureVerse side of things, our mission is to make the open metaverse a reality. And right now, it's just a meme. I think, this notion of, we talked about interoperability earlier, it just doesn't exist. You go out there and you have characters or assets and they work in very few places. And partly that's because the hard work hasn't been done to provide the tools that are necessary for things like interoperability to actually work. Well, that's the work the team's been doing for the last 5 years. And so when we come out with these MNTGE assets, people will be able to start to see that come to life. And we've taken it upon ourselves not only to produce a world of content that is interoperable with, one of the largest NFT ecosystems out there in the world, but to activate that content in a range of different applications. And so users can experience the content they have in different formats, on different devices, in different games, and different activities, and see how interoperability actually comes to life. We have this saying, which is, no matter where you are, you're always in the FutureVerse. And so the idea is that you can carry this most important portable asset, which is your identity and your social graph and your communications and your assets with you into different applications, as opposed to trying to force everyone into one space. And I think that'll be really great for the utility of MNTGE assets, because it'll come, pre-packaged in a way to work across a range of different applications and environments and characters and content.
No, okay, there's a lot to dig into. So I think when what's exciting to me about this brand, the MNTGE brand that we're building, is like that we wanted to create something with a look and a feel that felt like a nice brand. It was authentic. I encourage anybody listening, if you can, check us out on Instagram. I know it's not very Web3, but check us out on Instagram it's the MNTGE tag handle, TikTok too. Like the brand aesthetic and the storytelling, we're leaning into, really, I think, to a fashion side of it. I think that fashion, we've all talked about it, is really ripe for disruption. We've seen it in music, we've seen it in movies, and with Web3, we're seeing a lot of new places, but I think in two places in particular where you're going to see a real massive technological expansion is going to be in fashion and in hospitality. And I think the approach that we saw it around was the fashion category, and especially with these vintage items, which we think tell stories and have provenance and can easily put on chain. But we're doing that through culture and through storytelling. And I think, being able to experience what I've been able to experience by visiting Sean's warehouse, or his store, or watching some of these videos of him picking, like, this is the kind of storytelling that we want to have, and starting to kind of be shared. So again, I encourage, whether it's our TikTok or our Instagram or our Discord, to go and to follow some of these things and to kind of experience them. But again, Aaron, to your point earlier, like, the tech side of it and the innovation side of it is happening, right? It's happening at such a fast pace. But where I think a little bit of what's missing has been the cultural side of it and the storytelling side of it. So why I feel like a collaboration's really worked for us, both I think personally, where we collaborated in FLUF and we did the burrows and we helped create like the Snoop burrow there, or have talked to some other creative talent. Like, we've been thinking about, like, how do you bring this to the next 20 million people? How do you expose it on a broader level? So I just kind of say that to say, like, do you feel like there's a shift happening, that as we're in this bear market, there's more awareness coming and we're going to onboard the next 100 million?
Yeah, I think so, because part of, I think, what had potentially turned people off in the past was that the focus was on the, over monetization of the content. And what's really going to bring people into to the next phase of growth is focus on the experience of content. And the people who are really there for the long term are the ones that are focused on doing that stuff. But those that are there for the quick gains, they'll be gone already, be dead already, because their model wasn't thinking any longer than that. And so bringing it back to experience and bringing it back to culture is what's going to create that next generation of users, because that's the things they care about. And they were turned off by the other side of this market. And so not having that there opens the door for the things that matter to shine through. And our mission is to make that experience feel like magic. You should come into Web3 and not have to know that you've even done that. And if we deliver that experience to people and it's frictionless and they start to look beyond the technology into the experience and the content, that's what's going to break the doors down or the dams down and let them flood in.
Agreed. And Brennan, do you have any more technical questions? I want to make sure we get in some of the granular stuff, because I could talk philosophically about style, design, and culture all day.
No, I think one thing that's been really eye-opening is how much TLC goes into the animation side of things, how much goes into the texture side of things. I mean, I think it speaks for itself when you look at a FLUF or a bear just as they are. I mean, they are super beautiful pieces of art that you can zoom in on and see, fur texture and all of these beautiful things. Would you guys be able to elaborate a little bit on kind of that process of building those characters and the work that goes into those, building out that texture and the back end? Because I think that's really cool for a lot of people to hear about, because they see the end product, but they don't see the months and months and years of building that go in to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey and a lot of lessons along the way. We quickly realized why a lot of people in the space don't bother with 3D fur, but we're definitely not one to shy away from a challenge. And it's been incredible to see how the progress the team has grown, the level of talent that we've managed to bring on board now that we have literally some people that have worked on some of the biggest movies and games in the world coming and joining the team now. And it's really fun to see, especially how everything started and the kind of creative ideation process. I imagine it's probably not too dissimilar to fashion in a lot of senses, where it's like, well, you just come up with an idea and you're like, that'd be pretty cool. Let's see how we can achieve that, and kind of get a few brains together and look at different ways of kind of making that happen. But I mean, I guess to take that further, is the beauty of this space is that we're not bound by kind of natural physics, which is to kind of touch back on what Aaron was saying before about, like, imagine if you could wear smoke, which I'm still not convinced isn't physically possible, but we'll see about that. So for us in the space, I mean, we always wanted to really push the quality as far as possible. We see a lot of really low effort projects at times emerge, and sometimes they do it intentionally, and it's kind of part of the meme of their culture is that it is low effort, but sometimes it's just lazy. And to me, it's like, if you're not taking pride in your work, if you're not passionate and you're not kind of really putting your heart and soul into what you're building, then don't expect other people to feel that when they look at it. There's actually a term, I think it's a modern Greek word, called moarchi, which I really love, and it's the concept of basically putting one's soul into their work. And that's kind of what we try and embody, is that no matter what we create, we really want to try and push the boundaries of what we can achieve in terms of fidelity, the user experience, the way that people can interact with them, and then that also leads to us pushing the technical boundaries of, okay, how can we scale this? How can we take this into a larger environment? How can we make this more immersive and more experiential? So, I mean, that's really just to kind of sum it up, is we really love pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible, and this space is what that's all about.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, to add to one thing to that, when I discovered your project, specifically the fluff drop, whatever, a year and a half ago, I was, up to that point, I'd purchased a bunch of JPEGs, right? Just cartoon images and great stuff that, I still to this day I enjoy. But what I was tripped out by was this ability to like change the music out, or change the backgrounds. I didn't realize at that point, this is coming from a person who's not super tech savvy, but I didn't realize that you could play with these items. And so when I discovered what you guys were doing, I was fascinated that you could have this character with these backgrounds and with these cars in them, and you could switch them out and you could start to play with them and change them. So you guys were the first to sort of bring that to my attention. So I again, is that something that you're seeing evolve further? Like what's going on there?
I think we were definitely one of, if not, I mean, we were the first definitely to do it kind of in the avatar space, but in terms of bringing those different components together and having like customizable NFTs, we were definitely one of, if not the first as well. Because it always, like, to me, if it's heading towards the metaverse and it's all about how you're expressing yourself and your digital identity online, identities change. We evolve as people. We're always changing what we like and how we represent ourselves. So it didn't make sense to kind of take this static approach. And it also, if you look at it from a kind of IP perspective and, giving people the rights to these assets, imagine if, Disney owned the rights to Iron Man in one of his suits, but then Sony owns the right to Iron Man in a different suit. It's like, how would that work on a commercial basis? And that's kind of what you're dealing with sometimes with these collections. So for us, it's more about, okay, let's look at how we can introduce as much uniqueness and customization as possible. So it's not just okay, here's what you get and that's it and done and kind of move on, because we want people to grow and evolve over time and be able to grow and evolve their digital identity and experiment in new ways and try new things. As I said, this whole space is about experimentation. Sometimes it will work out, sometimes it won't. And people should also have that opportunity when it comes to playing with digital identity. It's a lot easier to play with new ideas and new expressions in the digital realm. And, you'll find out quickly, actually, maybe this one doesn't quite represent what I like. So to take that approach, I think we're starting to see more people go down that route. And I actually had a conversation with OpenSea last week about trying to get some better features put in place to support kind of dynamic NFTs and the dynamic kind of rarity that comes with that. But yeah, it's definitely, as when we first launched, I thought we were maybe 6 months ahead of the market, but it's been over a year now and not real, like only just starting to see some others kind of play with these kind of boundary pushing concepts as well. So I mean,
we're already ready to go on the next leap with the Root network. The whole idea of dynamic NFTs has been somewhat constrained by the way smart contracts work on ETH for us, and so we haven't kind of pushed the boundaries even as far as we wanted to yet. But with the Root network going live, we're going to get out there and show a whole kind of new level of functionality across the collections in terms of interoperability and swappable traits and swappable items and all those kinds of things.
I love that. Yeah, no, I think that's what you guys are going to push forward there. Is I can't wait to see what happens. And I will give a little, because it has been asked before in our Discord and stuff. What we are building now with MNTGE is an Ethereum based project. So we will be Ethereum first, but I think to get to a place of scale to understand to follow your lead is going to be really interesting of how we can expand, to a
Yeah, and
place where there's really opportunity.
we're totally compatible with Ethereum as well. A bunch of the FLUF World and FutureVerse collections are started out on ETH, and I think that's the other thing that's important about the open metaverse is openness. You can't be a maxi on anything if you believe in decentralization and the open metaverse, and having that connectivity so that people can choose where they store their asset, I think is a really important thing. And we'll see, connectivity from assets that exist on ETH coming in to get utility on the root network, or root network assets going to ETH if they want to find some application or liquidity. There'll be all of that stuff that happens through the technology we've developed, and keeping it open is a really important kind of part of our culture and the way we see the world evolving.
Amazing. Brennan, what was your question? I jumped in. I didn't mean to interrupt you before.
No. I was gonna ask about, just in general, if you guys are building so much right now, what's been something where you've kind of hit a roadblock and then you push through it?
Which week?
Yeah, just this morning, or
that's what I'm saying. You guys are always pushing the boundaries.
I think the community would say legs, but we got there before Zuck, so I think that has been one that's going to be a standout, is just getting the full optimized models, or the pipeline for producing these full optimized models that have fur. Like Alex said, when we first created the assets, we definitely underestimated how much trickier fur was. But I guess what that's done is given us the ability to tackle the hardest problem first. And so anything that's come after that has kind of seemed like a doddle. And we've been able to develop technology solutions along the way that we can take into other stuff that we do, that solve some of the stuff that we came across during that journey. There's probably a million other examples of tough problems we've had to crack, but that's one the community definitely resonate with.
Yeah, totally. I think legs are a tough one. Sean, you do love some jeans. You've been on a jean and Carhartt kick lately.
I'm just a bottoms guy in general. I think the bottoms category has been underserved. And in a world where we've got millions of t-shirts, I think it's so important to have some good bottoms. It's funny, like, I've gotten the round 2 design team together, and I told them the theme going forward as of this last year is we are a bottoms company. So it's really like a focus on anything for your bottoms, your pants, your shorts, whatever. So
what's trending, man?
Part from like the resurgence post-COVID, because there was a significant period of time there when pants were optional because you're only meeting through Zoom. So,
yeah, no, honestly, I think maybe we all missed pants a ton, and so now, like, post-COVID, we're like, all right, pants, I need crazy pants, gotta show off my pants, maybe that did feed into it a little bit.
What's trending on the pants side? Because like you told me about the Carhartt double knees, like before I was rocking them. I mean, like, and obviously, silhouettes are getting baggier, more patches. Like, tell me where are we going?
Right now, I mean, vintage is headed into a dive into the early times. So, whereas like this last year, it was very like late 80s, 90s, early 2000s based. I would say like the early 2000s is sticking, but also like vintage is going deep right now. So there's a lot of interest around like, dude, turn of the century shit. Like, I'm sure everyone saw those jeans that just sold for $75,000 in auction that were from the Levi's from the 1880s or 1890s. So, I'm just seeing like more and more people changing their collections from 90s stuff to garments with even deeper stories, which again, like, it kind of keeps going back to the thing where we're becoming more and more obsessed with telling stories or finding out deeper stuff where, a dude might get a vintage t-shirt from the 90s and be so excited to tell the story on it. Then you see someone sell a pair of Levi's from 1887 and you're like, holy shit, the history of my 90s shirt doesn't even compare, And so that's where we're headed right now. It's really cool. If you go to like the Rose Bowl flea market, you'll see tons of sellers with like 1940s, 50s, and 60s apparel. So it's really cool seeing it go that direction. And yeah, we're kind of like moving into a time of real expression, whereas like people aren't focusing as much of like a brand name, more of like a look. And this is something that's been popular in places like Japan, Tokyo specifically, has been leading, an absolute leader in the fashion world, whether it's vintage footwear, you name it. I go, whenever I travel to Japan, I feel like I'm taking a 5-year step into the future, to see what's going to be hitting in the US in the next 3 to 5 years. And, that's kind of like been a thing that I noticed there as I would go to Japan, and I'm like, man, people are just putting together really nice outfits that aren't based around brand names. It's just based around a look, a style, a personality, an expression, of yourself, and it just really screams like personality. And so it's really dope seeing it kind of make that change as well here, like in the US, a few other countries, and then even again, like taking that personality representation a step further into this Web3 world. I mean, it's really cool.
So I was in Amsterdam a week ago,
Yep.
and I used that opportunity to check out the vintage, which is, by the way, it's thriving there. Like there's tons of vintage stores, and what tripped me out was everybody's rocking U.S. high school Letterman jackets.
Yeah.
Right. And like Ohio State with like 6 patches, and the guy's like, "What do these patches mean?" He's asking me. He's like, "What does it mean?"
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Division
I'm
One
like,
champ.
that's my home. I'm like, that's my home state.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
he had no idea.
No, it's cool. Like, I love that because we've always loved, like, we would have customers come to our store from Australia and go to our sports section and buy like a Giants shirt, a Jets shirt, a Yankees t-shirt, Baltimore Orioles. Like, it could be anything. And you're like, oh, sick. Like, and I'm always talking to everyone. I'm like, yo, like, you guys just fuck with any team out there? And he's like, yeah, like in Australia, like, we don't have like a team. He's like, we're buying it for the style. And so it's kind of like same thing what you guys experienced in Amsterdam, was that it's like, dude, right now, collegiate stuff and just like US locational things, souvenir type shirts, I mean, they are popping. And it's the kind of thing where in the US you might be like, oh, I'm Cowboys all day, boys for life, and you're only buying Cowboys stuff. But a consumer from another country is like, Cowboys, I don't really care. Cool t-shirt though, I'll wear a Redskins one the next day or whatever. And so it's just kind of sick. I mean, it's a whole different consumer out there, but it's a lot of fun to try to hit all sides of it,
to dig in. So Brennan, you asked Nux what?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Yo, Nux, what was a piece that you saw last week when you were down with Sean and I? What was something that that stuck out to you when you were looking through everything?
The first thing that pops to my mind, and this will just kind of share like my bias on things, was some of the old like more video game related stuff. There were multiple different items that were in there, and I just get such a big kick out of that because when you think about, it's kind of the same as where we're at right now, but when you think about when those things were, the genesis of those different items, the way the world looked at them versus the way that they look at them now, like the whole Mario franchise, Nintendo and everything, like everything around that. Just thinking about the parallels almost between that era and where we are right now, like those first couple of games that actually grab people's attention started to be in everybody's different home. And, you hear about like the unsealed ones selling for like tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars and stuff like that. That just blows my mind because, you can still go back and play those right now. And it's the exact same experience. The only difference is, now you have a nicer TV you can see it on, or it's ported into the Switch or, something like that. So I don't know. I get a big kick out of those. I've got a lot of old game systems and stuff like that sitting around my house too. And so I love seeing that alongside all the sneakers, alongside all like the, the toys and the animals and stuff like that. It was just cool to see it all juxtaposed next to each other.
Dope. Thanks. Yeah. It's kind of like that's kind of like the inside of my brain in there where, I mean, it's just the most random stuff ever next to each other. It's like a Coca-Cola vending machine with an R2-D2 Pepsi display next to it, next to a Go-Yard trunk with a version 1 Mac computer on it. So I'm like, who the hell knows what's going on in there? I don't fucking know. But I love showing it off though.
Yeah,
I love seeing what people gravitate for. It's like, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's part of where I think so much of the storytelling that we can do, through social, that people can experience, and hopefully, ultimately, people who own some of the stuff we can make can get that experience live of what you're curating, because it's a wonderland, man. It's a vintage wonderland, which gives us all this nostalgic feeling and brings us back. So we're rounding out the hour. Usually keeps an hour. There's a lot going on, so I feel like we should have a few more questions, but are we okay? And Brennan, you could tell me or not. Like, can we talk about the scan process a little bit?
We might want to save that one.
Let's save it. Let's keep them on their toes. Let's keep them on their toes.
All right. So we'll save.
We'll show it. I think a good way to do it is to show it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what we were talking about earlier today. Is like, words are one thing, but I think when we show what we're all thinking right now, I think it's going to be the best explanation.
Okay,
yeah, 100%.
I love it. Brennan, any questions from the Twitter questions or anything you want to ask anybody before we?
There was one that came in that was kind of for the group. That was, what will your biggest visible impact in the real world on your project make?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I want to answer that, but I also feel I'm going to tell my Rolex story. Okay, is that cool? So when I first got a Rolex, that was the aspirational purchase that I'd ever had. It was a dream as a kid to own a Rolex, and I never thought I'd get one. And then one day, through work and success, found myself, I was able to purchase my first sort of entry Rolex. And that was 15 years ago. And when I bought that, the jeweler said to me, he said, that watch is valuable, but this box and this receipt is what really makes it valuable, because it authenticates it. It's essentially, I think in the world of Web3, it's the ledger. And at the time, it was counterintuitive to me. I was like, well, why paper and plastic? This is steel and platinum and gold. Like, it just didn't make sense. But I'm glad I listened and I put that box away. And 15 years later, I happened to be, the collectibles explosion happened, and during COVID, NFTs, and I thought about that watch, and I realized that, that box, was what gave it that value, and I realized that having those two together was super important. So I think about that a lot. And when I think about this world of people saying like, oh, why do I want a real item with an NFT attached? I think about that, and I think, like, not all items deserve to have a digital version of themselves. But when I think about these vintage items and these things that have collected value over time, to have that digital component and that digital twin is a very important thesis. So I'll just say that to say that that's a lot of the thinking that we're applying here, and that's where I think we can think about both creating very cool, innovative digital items, but also figuring out how there's attachment in real world physics. I think that's where I'll leave it. Thank you.
The other thing that really excited me on that same point was just the ability to kind of spread the love a bit more. These little treasures that have been collected can find another life and bring some joy to people in a different format, in a way that they never would have had access to previously, when they were kind of kept on the shelf.
Love it. I think we and again, like, I think that question is a good one, because whoever asked it's pretty right on point. You're like, everyone's asking questions that we're probably going to be answering in the next week, maybe less. So I think it's one of those things, like, stay tuned on the Discord, and I think a lot of things are going to come to light in the next week or two.
Perfect. And then, so before we jump, I mean, I want to leave it open to you, Aaron. Is there anything, like, parting words or anything that you want to kind of highlight about what you have going on, or anything else?
No, just really excited for this collaboration. Can't wait to explore it. I personally want to see how we can extend fashion to cars. I know that's something that that Sean's already been doing with Porsche, and seeing how we can push the boundaries a little bit more beyond what a wearable is into some of the other assets that we have. That's the thing that I think is going to be on my mind for a little while.
I think you'll be excited to hear some of the conversations we've been having at Porsche then on that side of things as well. So I think we have some other conversations to be had. Some very exciting stuff over there. But yeah, we're on it.
Aaron, you got to buy the Sean Porsche and put it in the on display in
honestly 100%. Put it in the Adam Car Club.
Let's go. All right, first, it's amazing. Nux, any parting words?
Yeah, I had something I was thinking about earlier, and it's gonna be a little fun and philosophical, so hopefully I can land it. But there's a quote, I had to look it up, by Arthur C. Clarke, which is, you guys all heard it. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And if you think about everything we've talked about over the last hour, you talked about the smart contracts, Alex was talking about kind of the animation pipeline and our journey there with legs and fur and things like that. And then Aaron and Sean both kind of touched on the magic of being able to sort of do anything that your mind can sort of come up with in this world, as we're talking about fashion in a more digital sense. And I guess my just parting word is, if I had to pick one concept to sort of hover around for this partnership and everything that we're building together, I think that quote hits it pretty well. That when we think about technology and non-fungible labs and FutureVerse and how we're helping from like a quote unquote technology standpoint, it's so much more than just smart contracts. And if you listen more and more to what Aaron's been saying and what we'll continue to say about FutureVerse and how we bring in, we get us from a couple of 100,000 people, getting excited about ape monkey cartoons to, millions of people or hundreds of millions of people actually engaging with this technology and their lives being benefited from it. I hope that, from the lens of provenance, we can look at this project in particular as one that really pushed us from a cultural standpoint from one place to another, and really showcase what a lot of that magic can look like, and really push the envelope of kind of how fashion and all these other kind of peripheral things that we're talking about can be experienced in ways that we wouldn't be able to in the quote unquote physical world. So there's my kind of philosophical musings for the day, but just wanted to share that because you guys inspired me to think that earlier in this conversation.
Nick
killed it.
You killed it, Nux. I love that quote. Nick, there's one more that I think we can close out on that keeps popping up in Discord. Can you answer in one sentence, what is the goal of MNTGE?
Who's that?
That's really tough. One sentence?
Tough. Just give him the headline.
Did you really just put him out there like that?
Yeah, he's got it. Nick always says it. He's got it.
Give it to us, Brennan. I want to hear it.
No, you got it.
Come on. Let's hear it from you, Brennan. Come on.
MNTGE is the home of where vintage meets Web3 and building digital wearables for all.
Well said.
Okay, cool. I can dig it. I just want to give a shout out. I got to give a quick shout out to Assad. He just texted me from Jadu. He said he's listening and he loves it. So, you're next, man. We got to get you on here. You're part of the extended family.
We got to get these into the AR verse as well, don't we?
Exactly. I mean, look, the AR and filters. Again, looking forward to discussing all that. So a lot of that stuff will be happening soon. I want to give Alex anything for you on the way out. We'll make sure everybody gets a quick parting word, even if it's advice on what to read.
I wasn't looking to forward to following Nux after that philosophical explosion of emotion. But yeah, I think just a really cool part of this space, and it actually goes back to one of the first projects that we did, which is an experiment called Unstoppable Art Machine, which was basically digitizing street art so that it could live forever. And that's what a really great facet of this is, you get these incredible pieces of vintage clothing, but they've got a lifetime. They've got an expiry date for the most part, especially if they end up being worn. And if they're just sat on a shelf, then no one really sees them. But the ability to digitize them and to bring them to life in these digital landscapes and allow them to live forever is really exciting because it gives that sense of permanence to it. So yeah, I'm not going to wax philosophical like Nux. I think I'll leave it there.
You did a great job. Okay, so Sean, I'm giving you the last word before I peace, love, and soul.
Man, my last word is just an apology for not letting the team do the leak that we wanted to do tonight. I think we were going to do a major leak, and this is just sorry to everyone for not letting, for being the stump that didn't let the leak go through. But hey, I'm telling you right now, like, that Discord's about to be popping. So just keep on the Twitter and Discord, and like, we're going to come heavy.
All right, perfect. Well, let's love it. Share us on Twitter, share us on Instagram, share us on TikTok, whatever it is. We'll be back next week. Got a lot of stuff drop in the meantime, and I always love chopping it up with everybody. So talk soon. It's out.
Thanks, everyone.